Welcome back to another episode of the new podcast, Not the Same, where I bring you true stories of real people sharing their personal testimonies of transformation. I am your host, Rachel Heinberg. I know I say this every week, but I continue to be amazed at the power of God to transform someone. Last week, we had Laverne Crowett sharing her incredibly heartbreaking tale of desperately looking for love amidst so much opposition. I was privileged to be able to listen as she shared the power of finding true worth. If you're just tuning in, thank you. I'm glad you found us, and I'm grateful you took the time to check us out. If you haven't already, go back to the first episode and catch up. This journey has been amazing, and you're not going to be disappointed. This podcast is available on all major platforms, so choose your favorite and like, subscribe, or follow to make sure you don't miss out. Today's episode is going to be exciting for me personally. My guest is someone dear to my heart. Bongi and her husband, Steve, are currently the outreach directors here in El Dorado Park. We were also bandmates for a couple years, so I know her fairly well. However, beyond the basics, I know very little of before she came into church as a young teenager. As I know there's always more to the story, I'm eager to dive in. So, Bongi, thank you for being here and to share your story. I know bits and pieces of it, as we've talked, but maybe go ahead and start when you were growing up, or we'll go from there.
Okay. First of all, thank you for asking me to come to your podcast. I'm an avid listener. And I was very excited when you asked me. So I grew up in Freedom Park. I was born in Soweto, in Bara. It's a hospital in Soweto. After that, I lived with my grandma and my mom and her sisters. And when I was 2, my mom met my stepdad. And so we moved into Sia. It's like a smaller community in Freedom Park. And so that's where I spent the rest of my childhood. So I met my stepdad for the first time when I was 2 years old. And from there, my mom and stepdad, they had my 2 brothers. Yeah.
Okay, so what year were you born?
I was born in 2003.
2003.
Yes.
And so you said you met your stepdad at age 2.
Yes.
So those first 2 years, I'm assuming there was no father in your life.
Not at all. So my mom met my dad in Germiston. They sent her there because she was just troublesome. She was naughty. So they sent her there in hopes that she'll come back straight. So she went, and during that year, that's when she met my dad. When she was about to leave, they broke up. But then that's when she found out she was pregnant.
Oh,
and so she did break the news to him, but then it was like a touch and go situation. She was never really able to connect with him. Yeah, it was just weird from then on. And
so it's like an old-fashioned ghosting.
Yes.
Okay. So then she came back to Freedom Park.
Yes, she came back. Obviously, she spent the first 2 years with my grandma, and then she met my stepdad.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was so young. I grew up knowing that he was my dad.
Okay.
I didn't know anyone else, but whenever we would go for family gatherings with my aunts, like that's when I would hear like, oh, that's not your real father. I remember the first time hearing that I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's not your real dad. And I was like, okay, your real dad is in Rustenburg. So when I was 5, he would start calling like twice a year, like, hi, I miss you. Do you miss me? And I remember like feeling so awkward, like, yes, I do, but I don't know you. Like I used to think that.
For sure.
Yeah, in my head. But that's when I found out, okay, this is not my real dad. Also, there was so much violence, like so much violence from an early age.
Between
my mom and stepdad.
Okay, and were they married?
No, they were not.
Okay.
Yes, but they've been together for almost 15 years.
So you said violence.
Mm-hmm.
Would you witness this yourself, or is stories you would hear?
No, I would witness it myself, because me and my brothers would be there and would be watching it all. It would start off obviously like a verbal altercation that started arguing, and then before you know it, they're throwing each other with hot water.
Oh wow.
They're burning stuff, they're fighting. It was so embarrassing because like I just had that feeling like we are that family in the community. Everyone knows it's gonna go down, you know? So everyone would start running there, you know, to break them apart. And I used to be so embarrassed. Yeah, and I just remember this one time, like they were fighting outside. They were on the ground, like it was just a mess. It was at night, and so my mom had fainted. I thought she had died, and I was saying, Mom, please wake up, I'm hungry. I wasn't hungry, but anything to get her to wake up, you know? Yeah, I was so scared. And I think at the time she was pregnant with my brother. I think you met him. So
you're the oldest.
Yes.
So let's go back there. How long after your stepdad did your brother right after you come?
My stepfather's first son with my mom. We were 3 years apart.
Okay.
And then another 4 years later, she gave birth to my other brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when this big fight that you remember, how old would you have been? Roughly 7?
Like there were other ones before that.
Yeah.
But this particular one that I just told you about, yes, around that age range, yeah.
What was the family environment like besides, obviously you said the violence? Was that like all the time?
It was a lot of the time, like most of the time. So yes, on the outside we were pretty normal, like we looked very normal. But obviously you knew what was going on. Like it was adventurous. I don't know what other words like to describe it as, because you don't know where you would sleep that night. Okay, you're coming back from school, they're fighting, and then maybe, if your dad decides to throw your mom out, then you'd in the nights at 12 midnight hours, you'd be roaming the streets, and then strangers would pick you up. I don't know how many times I've slept in strangers' bedrooms. Like literally people we don't even know. And
because your dad had sent you guys away.
Yes, with all our clothes and toasters. It was just so weird,
Oh, wow. And the community-wise, that people would just take you in.
Yes, but at some points, strangers, like absolute strangers, would take us in, like not even people in our surrounding community. I remember this one time, it was so late at night and it was dark and we were just walking, and when we got further along, these couple of guys, they picked us up, and I think we were there for 3 days. But there was this one time where we were in a car, like after the whole fight happened and he chased us out, and we just traveled a long distance. I didn't even know where we were going. And finally we stopped somewhere and we go into this guy's house, and I wake up and I'm playing with other kids. I'm like, oh wow, this is my new home. I like it here. And then after this, my mom is like, okay, we need to go. Come. Yeah.
I can't even imagine as a child thinking through this. Like you said, from day to day. I like the word you said, adventurous, because I mean, kids really are resilient. I mean, they're just like up for them. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this is what we do, because if you don't know anything else, it seems normal.
Yeah.
Did your mom, as you got older, did she ever explain anything, or did you ever ask her questions about like, hey, what was this, or what happened, or
I didn't need to ask her questions. She was very verbal, and so it was a situation that whenever she fought with my dad, she would spew on us. Basically, she would tell us everything in a way so that we take a side, I guess. So most of the time when I was there, I always used to see things through my mother's point of view.
Okay.
So to me, my dad was the abuser and he was the horrible guy. He was the villain. Obviously, my mom did have her flaws, but he was just the abuser, and I did let him know a couple of times, and it did not turn out good for me. Yeah.
So during the abuse, like when you were young, did it ever go into you guys, or was it just aimed at your mom mostly?
It spilled over to me. So remember I told you when I was 4, it's when I found out, okay, it's not my dad, but I did not take it seriously. But then when he would fight with my mom, then he would start saying it, and I was like, oh, okay. And so at some point he would chase all of us, me and my brothers, but then it got to a point where he would fight with my mom. He would say, take your child. I don't want your child here. Or whenever they would fight, he would bring my brothers chocolates, and then I'd just be there.
So you knew pretty quick after that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like it was like, okay, there's definitely a line drawn here.
Exactly. Another point where the violence, like physical violence, spilled over to me. So he has a way older son. He's probably in his early 30s now, but he didn't raise him. So he came from Eastern Cape to stay with us, and he was so abusive, like towards me, towards my mom.
The son?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he would just beat my mom up, and his dad would encourage him. And then obviously I would try to defend my mom. 10-year-old little me trying to fight back this 20-something-old, and he would hit me. And I remember we went to the police station that night. I was still in my school uniform. I was picking my nail polish. I was like, wow, 10-year-olds are usually at home sleeping because tomorrow is school, but here I am at the police station. Yeah, but I just remember having that thoughts. That's when.
So this is basically a lifestyle pattern.
Yes.
That's happening, and not just from your stepdad, but from his son. Did you ever encounter any other kind of situation where you felt uncomfortable? Because obviously you're in strangers' homes, you're with, who knows where you are, right?
No, not at those places. I was just always excited because I was always hopeful that, oh my gosh, it's going to be different now. Is this our new home?
I guess that's positive.
Yeah, because I would just be so excited, and I'd always try to play with the other kids that were there, and I'd be like, oh wow, is this going to be our new home? Okay. I did experience like sexual abuse from my stepdad's son. Yeah, and it was really tough for me because we were like staying in the same house. Whenever I tried to report him, his dad and my mom, they'd be like, well, at least he didn't rape you. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. So they just built him a shack outside, like the house.
And is this the police saying this? Or was you never got there because your mom...
I did go to the police myself because when I told my parents, they were like, oh, well, at least it didn't go that far. And I told the teacher told me to go to a police station, and I did. But the experience was so terrible. When they were taking my statement, I don't know, the police officer had taken some pills, so she was sleepy, and she was like, oh, please repeat that. And and after she took my statement, she told me, unfortunately, because you're underage, I was 14 at that point, there's nothing you can do, you need to come with the parents. And so I went home, tried to get my mom to come with me, and she was like, no, it's okay. If he had raped you, I would have gone.
Sorry, I know we're kind of bouncing around a bit. Your stepdad has always been in the picture.
Yes.
So this is your whole life was happening. And so fast forward from obviously 4, and then now you're hearing all this stuff. Now at age 10, you said you're trying to fight off your stepbrother. It's getting physical. So he's still around even up to 14, or would he just come visit back and forth?
So he would mess up, and the community would want to beat him up, or
mess up. Like, what do you mean?
Like he would steal people's things, you know.
Oh. Okay.
And obviously, where I stayed, the community practiced mob justice, and so they would want to beat him up. So whenever that occurred, he would run away and go back to Eastern Cape, and then come back again after a couple of months and mess up again, go back. So he was in and out. So he would stay with us for months at a time, and then leave, and then come back. And that was the pattern.
Wow. And so this whole time, your home is pretty chaotic.
Yes. And when he was around, it was just a bit more, but hey, it's the usual.
Wow. I know your personality now, but you seem like you said, you wanted to stand up. Were you pretty feisty when you were young too, or did you find your voice only later?
No. If anything, I'm much more quiet now. Back then, I don't know where I got this confidence, but I was so confident. Looking back in hindsight, I think it was a facade. Because I did not want anyone to know what was going on behind closed doors. Okay. And very few people did. Only obviously the people that saw what was happening, but people at school, and even when I started coming to church, no one knew. I was like, no one can ever know. And so I just had this facade. I remember being 12 and, going to school, my shoulders lifted high. I was just so confident.
Wow. And you say that was your protection, right? Yeah. You didn't want people to know what was going on.
Yeah.
This situation happened when you were 14. However, I know you came to church even before that. So leading up to you actually coming into the church and getting saved, what was it that transpired? Why you came, how you came, and let's kind of talk about that.
I came to the church when I was 12, but it was not because of anything that drew me here. I need to come because I'm scared of this and this happening. So prior to me coming in that year, there was a church I was going to, but I had just stopped. My stepdad stopped me, but I was a faithful attender there. And I remember when I was 12 years old, there was a girl in my class, and she used to come to the Potter's house, and she would brag at my church, they have a screen for the lyrics, you can see the words, just dumb stuff. And at the time, I was just church hopping. Okay. And my best friend and I decided to okay, since we're checking out each and every church, let's just go and see. It was the year before I started high school. Okay. I was okay, I'm going to high school and in my community. When you start high school, it's either if you're a guy, you abuse substances, you get into drugs, alcohol. Okay. If you're a girl, you get pregnant, 14, 15, and I'm not even exaggerating.
Wow.
Those are the ages. So many times people had told me to my face, you are going to get pregnant when you're 15. I used to pray and I was like, God, please, I don't want to get pregnant. I know it's going to happen, but please don't let it happen.
Wow.
You know? And like, I was just waiting for it, and I was so anxious. And so whenever I would have like boyfriends, I'd be like, oh, is this the time? Is this when it's going to happen?
Wow.
Yeah. And looking back right now, like, there was no protection for young people growing up, you know? Everything that we were exposed to, like sexuality at a young age.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 12, that girl that got me and my best friend to come, we were just walking around and she was wearing this skirt and she kept asking us over and over, oh, do I look fine? We said, yes. Are you sure? Yes, you look fine. Why? Because no guy has hit on me today.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so
you guys are all 12.
All 12. But even before that, I knew that if I wear certain things, I'm going to get attention. I knew that from an early age.
It's interesting. I mean, it's obviously very sad, but that it's so normal that you feel like if you're not getting attention, I mean, you guys are children, but you already are in the mind, like, if men aren't talking to me or hitting on me or giving me attention, then I must not look nice. I mean, that is why girls seek after this attention, is because that's what they expect. And so this whole community is such that, I mean, it's like you said, there's no protection. That's crazy. So you guys come, and did they have the big screen with the words?
So the first Sunday, oh my goodness, we were so late. When we came in, people already had their heads bowed, like it was altar call. And we were crazy. We answered the altar call. We didn't even know what we were doing. Yeah. We just saw people going forward and we were like, let's go. And wow, we just went. So fine. The next Sunday we came early because they told us the times. But we met these boys and we started dating them. And that was pretty much the only reason we were coming.
And you're all 12?
We're all 12.
And how old?
Okay, the boys are older, like 18, 19, you know.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay, so you're 12.
Yeah.
And they're 18, 19.
Yep.
And you're dating them.
Like that same Sunday. I think something in me was just like longing for love.
Absolutely.
Like for someone to say, yes, like I want you, you're beautiful. Because, like I told you, whenever the fights at my home would happen, I would always feel like, oh my gosh, does my real dad even know what's going on? And why did he leave? Like, is it because of me? Is there something wrong with me? Yeah. Because I would look at my stepdad and I was like, why could he be there for his sons? But I wasn't good enough basically for him to stay. Yeah. That's how I felt. And already I felt like the oddball. Yeah. Because my stepdad wouldn't make it known whenever there was a fight. So I was vulnerable. And attention from males, it made me feel happy basically, you know. I would count the amount of guys that would hit on me, like as I was walking. I'd be like, yes, okay, today was a bit few, but it's okay, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really heartbreaking. Yeah. I mean, and I know that you're not the only one. I mean, you just said that you're in a community where this is everyone. Yes. This is the norm. And that is so heartbreaking. So these, sorry, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the fact that these are adults, you know, they're dating these 12-year-old girls. What happens after you come the next week? And
so, okay, we start dating that Sunday. So the next Sunday we come again, they take us out on a fellowship, and now I'm meeting like other young people that are actually saved now. And I remember Sipho was like one of the people that was sitting next to me, but I was not even interested in anyone else. I was just interested in my boyfriend. And so, yes, I just kept coming, and it was obviously in the beginning, I couldn't catch what was being preached, you know, because I remember Pastor Bennett had such a strong accent. And I remember one of the first sermons like that I caught a few words. It was talking about daha, but it was saying daha. So me and my friend were like, you know, we're just like, excited, like, oh yes, it's saying daha. Like, so that was the only thing. But then the more and more I came, obviously then I was starting to hear the message. And obviously if I had to die, I would definitely go to hell. Even though I was going to church before, I still lived life like there was no sense of urgency. I did not live life like there was a God. I stole, I lied, I did all sorts of things. I decided to answer the altar call, and I remember thinking to myself, God, if you're real, please save me. But I don't know at this point because I've been going to church my whole life and I've never heard anything like this. But if you are, I want you.
Okay.
And I prayed and I didn't feel anything fuzzy. So I thought, okay, it didn't work. And so the next Sunday I prayed, and the next Sunday again. I kept answering the altar call. I don't know how many times, until one day during school holidays, I wanted to come to prayer. I just had this thing compelling me to come.
Yeah.
And I prayed that day, and I didn't want to like leave my seat. I just wanted to keep praying.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And then I had a different boyfriend, not the guy I had initially started dating when I came to church. And so he came to see me, and oh my goodness, I was so convicted.
Was this also a church guy?
Yes. I was like, okay, God, sorry, I'm never going to kiss anyone again. I was so convicted. And that's when I knew that like God did something in my heart. And ever since, I've never missed a service. I've been coming, and yeah.
So when the conviction came in and I guess you would say that's when you realized I am saved.
Yes.
I am different. How old were you?
I was 12 coming to 13.
Okay, so you weren't quite even 13 yet.
Yes, but I was almost there because it was in Feb.
Okay,
and
so
my
just
birthday's
before.
in March.
Yeah, just before. So I wanted to ask, because you said you were going to church your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So were you raised, like, was your mom some sort of Christian, or was there any traditional religion at home, or was it Christianity or some sort of mix?
So yes, my mom and my stepdad, according to them, they were Christian. And my mom, when we were much younger, like she would take us to church, but she stopped along the way. I think from the age of 6, we weren't going to church until I started going to my own church at 7 years old. And so it was...
Wait, sorry, you said your own church at 7.
Yes.
So you would go
alone
to church?
Yes.
Would you just find one, or did you go with like a neighbor?
I'll tell you the story. It's an interesting one.
Okay, I want to hear. I mean, you're 7.
Yeah. So it was a mix because they believed in ancestral things, and we would do rituals as well. If you were going to a far journey, like we had a long journey to go, maybe going to Eastern Cape, where they would take us to the Sangoma, and I don't know what it's called in English, but in Zulu it's called Uqaba, Okay. And so they cut you.
Oh yeah, and they put the muti or something inside your skin.
And there's a tiny wool belt that they put around your waist, and then it has a bag of muti, apparently for protection. So it was a mix. So my family, it was a mix of Christianity and a mix of ancestral.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay.
And so my friends and I was 7, my friends and I were playing outside this church. It was a Sunday. And so I think we were making a lot of noise for them. And so they just took us in, they put us at the church. And I was so awkward. I was just sitting there during the song service, and this lady kept coming up to me and, forcing me to clap my hands. And I kept sitting down, and she would lift me up and I'd sit down, and she finally just left me alone. But then the next Sunday I came back again and again and again, and I don't know, I just...
Because you like things, that's it.
Yeah. And I just fell in love with the church and the community, and I was so faithful. I came to everything. There's this thing they call umlindelo. So it's like it could be an overnight prayer or an overnight service. And even when they had their mini conferences, I would go. I was always there. I got to a point where I wore the uniform.
Yeah.
It's called Isambatu. And yeah, it's just like a uniform they wear at the church. And I had all 4 uniforms.
Wow. And your mom would buy them for you?
Yes. And I was 9. And yeah, I just loved the community. But obviously now, looking back in hindsight, like so many things were off,
Yeah.
First of all, there were sangomas in the church, and we would play drums for them. They would dance, and they would burn their muti, and would have to take a sniff of it. And
sorry for our non-South African listeners, muti means
medicine.
Yeah. Okay.
And people were practicing homosexuality in the church. Like there were a lot of them, like
open.
Yes, people knew, and
culturally,
it wasn't accepted.
It's not accepted in the African community, especially. So that's crazy.
But okay, where I come from, there's this link between upsangoma and homosexuality. Like a lot of the guys that practice that, they are homosexuals.
Wow, that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, a lot of the time. So that's what would take place. And the pastor's daughter was drinking, and obviously she's human, but I mean, hey, you go to church every Sunday.
Yeah, it's the example that there's no difference. So you went for a few years then?
Yes, until I was 10 years old, and that's when my dad stopped me from going,
Okay, was there, what did he stop you?
So at the time, at my home, we had a small spaza shop. So it was a shop where they sold like just food stuff. And so we called it a spaza shop. And so at the time, my dad told me that it's because your pastor bewitched us. And that's why our shop is not successful. He said that he saw him like planting muti outside our yard at 1 a.m. And so you can't go there anymore. And then later on, I found out that it's because when I went to their midnight services, when we were coming back home, a dog bit me, So, but there were people that were supposed to watch me. But then they said that like I'm forward, she's too forward, that's why the dog bit her. And so he was angry about that. Like, oh, you were supposed to watch her, but then you said that. But because he didn't want me to feel bad, he made up a story and said it's because your pastor bewitched us.
That's interesting that in a way he was protecting you.
Yes.
Amidst all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, sin makes people do crazy stuff, and I know there was violence and stuff. But that's interesting that he was like, no, I don't want you to get hurt again.
And remember I said when I was growing up, he was the villain. He was the bad guy.
Yeah.
But the more and more I grew, it sort of has become like hard to be mad at him. If anything, I feel so sorry for him.
Okay.
Because whenever he would fight, so obviously, so like me and him and my mom, like there would be this community leader that would come and try to, solve things between them. And there were like a few moments, where he would like be vulnerable and he would cry. And he would always say things like, I don't know my parents or his actual family.
Yeah.
So the people that raised him were, I don't know, they were just community members. He does not know any of his biological family, and he was passed around from home to home to home. So it's kind of hard to be mad at someone.
Well, he's just reciprocating. Like what we know now is this is generational rejection. Yes. I know kids like that inevitably suffer all kinds of abuse, whether mental, verbal, physical, sexual, when you're passed around like that, you know? And so he's carrying all of this. It really is sad when now that you're an adult, you realize you carry it with you. And if you don't have someone, and we know it's Jesus, right, to help you through that, what else do you just lash out, you do that. So, okay, you come to church, and now you're really, really in it.
Yeah.
You're in it. And so you mentioned the first fellowship you sat by Sibo, but you said you weren't even thinking that way. And so at what point did you see him and be like, I like them?
Actually, it took a while.
Okay.
Because the first time I saw him, I'm like, those socks. Because he was sitting right next to me and he wasn't feeling well. And his head was on the table. And I was like, oof, who's this guy, So we literally also stayed in the same community. And I did not know him up until that point. And so now, because I'd met him at church, I would like notice him and I'd see him where we stayed. And I remember the following week after the fellowship, he saw me and I was crying. And he was like so happy and so positive and smiling. I'm like, what is he smiling about? And I was like, what's wrong, my sister? And my friend was like, oh, her boyfriend just dumped her. That's just crying. And so he was just so happy. And I was like, just go away. Fine. I was still 12. I was 12.
Okay. So, and what's the age difference between you?
It's 4.5 years.
4.5 years. Okay, so he's quite young as well.
16 and a half.
Okay.
We fast forward, years go by. Okay, now I'm saved. I know him as this brother, he's like the golden child. Like he's been around longer than most of the youth. He's just a great guy. And he's in the friend zone like completely. He's like a brother to me. Yeah. And so when I'm in grade 10 and I'm 15 years old, I take on this subject that requires a laptop and I don't have one yet. And so I asked him for help because he had a laptop and he did the same subjects. And so I'd go to his house and his grandma would allow me to use his laptop and he would help me. Okay. And oh my goodness, he was not happy about it when I asked for help. Well, I didn't know this then, but later, he told me, he told his friends, she's coming. Why is she coming,
Oh, wow. Did you find out why?
We just didn't like each other.
Okay. You mentioned before about the other church saying you were very forward, but I know even people here were like, "Ay, man, she talks too much. She asks so many questions. She's so forward. She just talks and talks." So, but also, you were young.
Exactly. I was so excited. And remember, I used to come to prayer like all the school holidays I was here. And so most of the times, it was just the guys and me. So I was the only girl. So I like things. There was no way I was going to stay behind. I wanted myself there. So I was going to go with them wherever they were going. If Pastor Ron Bennett told them to do this, I'm going, you know? And so, like, I would annoy them so much. Like, don't you have any other girls to hang out with? They just didn't like me from then, and he didn't like me either. I didn't like him either too. But I was like, hey, I need his help.
I need his laptop.
Exactly. So I had this mentality when I was going to his house, like, okay, I'm there for business. There's no need for chit chats. I'm not going to talk to him. I'm just going to do what I have to do. And then I guess he felt obligated to talk to me, and so we spoke a bit as the conversation was flowing. Like, it was flowing, and I did not expect that.
Okay.
I expected a lot of awkward pauses and silences and just a forceful conversation, you know. But it was just flowing, and we had so many things in common. Wow. And then the next time I came again, now he would make up things for me to come. It's like, oh, you did not get that section, that chapter. Wow. You need to come so I can explain it to you. I would go, and then I got to a point where I had my own laptop now, and I didn't need to go to it. And then I'd be like, oh, I don't know what I pressed. I don't know what to do. So can you please help me? And I would go to it. And then, okay, so every time he would walk me back home. So now, I obviously had realized, because, oh my goodness, I like this guy.
Yeah.
And I was not planning to like anyone in high school because I did not want to date anyone. Because when I got saved, I made like a promise to God, I'm going to keep myself pure until I get married. And so whenever I would have a crush on a boy, I would literally pray about it. And my prayer would be like, God, please crush this crush. Wow. Because I don't like this guy, because you know what we spoke about. And 2 days later, I'd be over the guy, you know?
Wow.
And so I prayed the same prayer when I had a crush on Sipo, and I said to God, he's probably just being a nice guy. You know him.
Yeah.
I think he likes me, but, you know, he's just being nice. So please crush this crush. And then,
It didn't crush.
It was almost getting crushed.
Okay.
You know, and then as I was walking me back home this one day, I was like, okay, I'm nervous. I have something to tell you. I'm like, spit it out. And he was like, I like you. Can we get married? Yeah, literally.
It wasn't even like, can you be my girlfriend?
No.
It wasn't like, let's date.
Not like, I like you. Do you like me?
Oh.
No. I like you. Can we get married?
Okay, this is the third time in our episodes that this has essentially happened, where these South African men don't play around. Okay, so
I was like, yes, I'll marry you. But I want to study after a matric. And we're like, okay, cool. And then he said, okay, so we're gonna get married after you're done with high school. I was like, yeah, sure. It's so crazy to me, like thinking that we planned our future. Like, we were standing underneath the street lights. It was getting a bit dark because he had this thing to tell me. Like, we planned our future on the streets, under street lights. And it happened exactly that way, because I was still 15 grade 10, and so he waited 3 years. After he said that, we did not date right away. We waited, but I was so happy. Like,
but it was like this plan, like you said, you planned it, and now that it's planned, you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
You just know it's happening.
Yeah, he's waiting. He knows.
Wow.
Yeah, like for the next following days, I was on cloud 9. I was so excited.
So, but regarding your mom.
So my mom, I told her when I was in matric in January, like school.
You never told her anything before, but she knew Sipo.
She knew Sipo, but he was just like, his house, we used to wait for the transport there.
Okay.
That would bring us to church. So like that was like the gathering spot. Okay. And so every time I'm going to Sipo's house, she knew it's either I'm going there for school or like waiting for the transports, and that's it. She did not know anything else. But then after we spoke, Haibo, okay, would bring me snacks. And my mom was like, Haibo, this guy, what's going on? You know? So we waited, and my mama only told her for sure when I was in matric in Jan. I was about to go to school. Schools had not opened, and she was the one that opened up like a door for the conversation.
Okay.
I was with my brother, and she said, "Guys, if you're dating, you need to tell me, because if you're lost, I need to know where to look for you." And so my brother was just like being shy. I was like, "Oh, I'm not dating, whatever." And then I said, "Okay, actually, there's a guy, and I'm getting married next year." I dropped it like that, and she was hurt. She was like, "What? I thought I had more time with you. What are you talking about?" She was like, I had all these plans, you know? What are you talking about? And so she was chilled when I told her initially. Okay. But I think leading up to it is when, she started acting up, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know lobola is a huge thing here. And there's always, everyone can be fine until it gets close. And then all of a sudden it's like, I want the money. Where's the money? Give me the money.
Sure.
So we've established that because you weren't living at your mom's house. When did you move out? So
I stayed, obviously, still with my stepdad and my mom and my brothers. I got my whole childhood until 17. So at some points from the age of 16, my mom wasn't really staying with us because she had a job far away. Okay. So she would leave for 3 days, come back for 3. And then it got down to her living for a whole month. Oh, and coming back for a day the next and then leaving again. And so now obviously I was just with my brothers, taking care of my brothers, doing the laundry, cleaning, and at school. And also my brother, he also developed the same attitude his dad had towards me. And so whenever we would fight, he would tell me that, this is not your father's house, when are you going to leave? You don't belong here, So obviously I also couldn't wait to leave. And yes, I was already saved, but such things were still happening in my life. But I trusted in God so much. I had this hope, God is going to take me out of here one day. I don't know when, I don't know what that looks like, but one day I'm going to get out of here. And I remember when I was 14, Steve Bowman was here for a revival, and it was the last night of revival, and I hadn't eaten in 3 days. I was waking up, going to school, coming to church, sleeping, and then it was the last night, and I prayed. I was like, God, you need to speak to me, because I'm so discouraged right now. I trust in you. I know eventually, this will all end, but wow. And that night, Steve Bowman gave me a word. I'll always remember that word because it came in such a season that I needed it. And it was something like, when I read my Bible, God's word comes alive in my heart, and I should not lose hope, basically. There's a dawn that's coming, and it has my name written on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I held on to that. Yeah. When I was 17, I'm in matric now. My brother, the tension between us, it was getting worse and worse and worse. He would try to beat up my other younger brother, and I would try to defend him. But now, because he had started puberty, he was getting stronger.
So you're 17 and he's 15?
Yes, okay. Yes. And he's getting stronger than me, and, taller. And this one time, he beat me up so badly. There was blood. My clothes were torn. It was just a mess. And I remember I went to my best friend's house and asked for a phone, and I called my mom. And my mom, obviously, she was like, "I'll talk to him. I'm so sorry, man." But in my head, I'm like, but I need a solution right now. And so I went back home, and I was like, I'm leaving. What fueled that, I remember, still the same year, I was in Afrikaans class. There's a book that we were reading, and so we were discussing it with our teacher. The book explores the theme of domestic violence and abuse. And so the teacher made a statement that some of you girls, if that happens to you, you're going to stay because you saw your mother doing it. Oh. And obviously I piped up and I was like, no, that's not going to be me. These people should just leave. And I was like, if you saw your mother doing the same thing, you're going to stay. And that just planted something in me. I was like, I am not going to stay. If that ever happens to me, I am leaving. I'm not going to stay for 10 plus years. And obviously when my brother did that to me, fine, it was not a spouse, but still, that was still abuse.
Still domestic abuse.
And I'm like, this is too much. I went through the emotional, the sexual, the verbal abuse, and now I have bruises, my clothes are torn, I'm bloody. I'm not going to stand for this. And I left. I went to Sipo's house. he was at work, his graduate was there, and I was studying. I was writing my prelims, and I was studying for physics paper 2, and I continued studying there. But my body was so like, it was bad.
Did she take care of you, his grandma?
She did, and she felt so bad, and we called sleep home. And later on, I slept at Dorothy's house.
Okay.
Yeah, and I took a bath, and I went to school the next day, and I wrote.
And you were all cut up and bruised up.
But no one knew a thing. And also, I was like the top students.
Did you tell people at church?
Like a handful. I was safe, but I still had that thing in me that I have to like keep this facade and hide. Yeah. So, okay, at the school that I matriculated, it was a different school than when I was in grade 9. And so when I was in grade 9, everyone knew that I was saved. And whenever like bad things would happen to me, or something as stupid as my zip of my bag, it breaks, people would be like, oh, why are you carrying a bag like that? Isn't God gonna fix it?
Wow.
Yeah,
the mockery.
Yes. And so I felt like people couldn't know what was going on in my life. But eventually they did. There was one morning when I was 15 in grade 10, obviously my dad, in the morning, he was beating up my mom, and I had just had enough of it. I was trying to record him so I could go to the police station and have evidence, but it was not working. And so I finally like did something. I was like, such an abuser, and I told him all sorts of things, and he got angry and strangled me. And I was getting ready to go to school. Okay, I just took my bag, went to school. When I got back home, everything of mine was just outside. After that happened in the morning, my mom came to school. She was crying to see if I'm fine. And then my class facade was broken. People knew now what's going on,
So then you were in a different school in Matric.
Yes.
When all this stuff was happening with your brother.
So I was writing physics the next day. I wrote, and then I called my aunt, and she agreed to take me in, basically. And so I went there, but my mom asked me to take my younger brother, who's 7 years younger than me, because no one was gonna really like do his laundry and make sure he goes to school.
Because your mom was gone.
Yes, feed him. I was doing that. But when I got to my aunt's, I would say I experienced a different type of abuse, like emotional. Because she knew I was saved. She would say things like, you're the reason your family is like this because you're always going to church. If you just stayed home and prayed with them instead of going to church all the time, things would be different. But in my mind, I was like, how can I change a grown man's actions? Or two adults, like how can I don't have the power to do that.
Can't.
And at church we come on Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and she did not understand that. I told Pastor Bandit about it and said I had to move out. And so for 2-3 weeks I was just hopping from one person's house to the next, and then afterwards that's when I finally found my own place. I found a back room.
Who paid for it? Did you have
I told my mom, and she helped me, and Sipo was also helping me at the time. Because I was 17, I was still in school, but I had nowhere to go. My mom would buy food every month. And I was staying with my brother still, my younger brother.
The whole time you're going to school?
Yes. And,
wow. So you're like this 17-year-old single mom, basically.
Yes. And I started acting weird. And my friends didn't understand. Like, you're leaving so early lately, but I had to get my brother. And I felt bad. I felt like I'm the one putting him through all of this. But then his dad acted up. He said I kidnapped his child. He wants his child. And so that's how he went back home. Okay. We were just hopping from one place to another. And
it's chaos.
Yeah, and I just felt horrible for him because now he was staying with me for some time. And now he needs to move back. And I was worried that no one would really take care of him because his father worked and my brother is just
and the abusive situation and everything. Wow. So this last year before you got married was pretty chaotic.
Yeah, it was not part of our plan, but in that year when I was writing my final exams in November, I got engaged. And I was not expecting it then because our plan was after matric. So I'm finishing in December. We're going to start dating in March because that's when I turn 18, and then probably get married somewhere in July, and So what happened in that year in matric, so Pastor Ron Bennett called us into his office. He's like, are you guys still dating? And we looked at each other confused, like, are we dating? And like, yeah, I guess. Then after we left his office, we're like, okay, I guess we're dating now, And it was in October, and so we officially dated for a month, and in November he proposed.
Okay.
And then the following year, I turned 18 finally on the 15th of March. And then the following day we went to sign.
Yes. So you essentially were married the day after you turned 18.
Yes.
On the 16th of March.
Yes.
And then you had your wedding ceremony on...
2 weeks later after we signed. So on the 28th.
28th.
Yeah.
So you're 18 and you're married. Now you're out with the situation.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. Well, fast forward a bit. Tell me a little bit about when you actually did have a baby in total rebellion to the statistics of where you grew up, because I know that's important to you.
Yes. Okay, so I got married at 18. And obviously now I had a free pass to be pregnant and all, but I did not want to because in my head it would still be considered teenage pregnancy. Okay, you're an adult when you're 18, but for some reason they still consider you a teenager up until you turn 20. So in my head I always used to be like, yeah, God did not say me to be a statistic, you know? Okay. But things worked out. I fell pregnant 2 years into our marriage, and on our 3rd year anniversary, our child was born.
And his name is?
His name is Luca.
Luca. He is literally the replica of his mother with his cute little face and his serious eyebrows. If you were to, I don't know, just say something to encourage those that are listening, like you got saved, but you still had to battle this stuff at home. You were still dealing with all this stuff at home. What would you leave with our listeners?
It sounds simple, but all I will say is trust in God, and believe that He has something better for you, and you might not know what it looks like or when that will be, but just trust in Him. People can help you, but it will never be enough. You need God to come through for you in your situation, and He will just hang in there and trust in Him.
I think that's a perfect place to stop. We had some laughs this time, which is good. Sometimes the conversations get so heavy, and I think this was both, you know? I'm sure you have so many more stories to share, because you're one of the best storytellers I've come across. I could listen to you tell stories all day. I know I've said that before, but even my girls had said that too. They're like, oh, when Bongi tells a story, you're just like in it. You're just in the story. So I appreciate you taking the time. I thank you so much for sharing that with us. As always, I also want to thank our listeners. I say it every time, but without a listener, the story can't be heard. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it. We never know the true impact of hearing someone share their experiences. For myself, each and every week has been such an incredible journey. I'm so grateful to be a part of it. I don't take this opportunity lightly. Lastly, as always, if you are not a Christian, or maybe you were, but have since turned away, and you want this change that Bongi talked about for yourself, John 3:16 says salvation is God's free gift to anyone who asks, and all you have to do is ask, acknowledge your sin, and your life can be transformed just like ours. Until next time, this is Rachel Heimberg, and you've been listening to Not the Same.